The ending of The Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 5 gave us quite a unique stir once we found out that Moff Gideon had escaped the New Republic's custody. As the Rangers encountered the remains of the Lambda-class shuttle floating in space, they found and deduced that it had been Moff Gideon's transport which had been attacked. The only piece of evidence that points to the culprit of this attack was a shard of Beskar sticking into the interior hull. Greetings, curious acolytes and Mandalorian mercenaries of the galaxy, and welcome back to the archives. I think we can all agree that it's quite obvious that Gideon's escape by the Mandalorians may have been framed. We have seen that Gideon has access to Beskar, which he clearly used to set the Mandalorians up in order to get them in trouble with the New Republic. But if this is the case, then who exactly freed Moff Gideon, and why? This is of course the big mystery of the episode, and the one that it left us on. But today, my friends, we have a theory ready to go. Certain circumstantial evidence might point to Moff Gideon's escape being orchestrated and executed by one Grand Admiral Thrawn. So now, it's time to open up another holocron, and one that could potentially peer into the near future of the Star Wars timeline. So, let us begin. It only makes sense that Moff Gideon would want to frame the Mandalorians, since they got in his way and cost him his victory with Grogu. The Mandalorians, Din Djarin specifically, have repeatedly proven themselves to be an impediment to the plans of the surviving remnants of the Great Empire. So the best way to slow them down without costing further Imperial resources would to be to pit them against the New Republic. And unfortunately, we've been shown that the New Republic isn't the most perceptive governing system, largely due to the fact that they have transitioned from being a small rebellion into being the presiding rulers of the known galaxy. The problem is that even though the New Republic has been instated for nearly a decade by this point in time, they are barely keeping themselves together and can't even keep the mid-rim worlds in balance, much less worry about the ever-growing threat of the Imperial remnant. A shocking revelation that we learned in this episode, that the Empire is now growing yet again, presumably the first time since Sidious and Vader's defeat, and likely growing under Grand Admiral Thrawn. The Grand Admiral is an absolute genius tactician and will most certainly be taking advantage of the New Republic's lack of insight, setting up this perfect ruse to get them to focus on the Mandalorians rather than the Empire, which is continuing to gain power from the unknown regions. Moff Gideon was able to cause a significant amount of trouble just by himself with his limited resources. Once Thrawn re-emerges into the picture, the Empire will come back in full swing, just as they did in Legends continuity. We have noticed a few ghost patterns here and there that suggest that the canon EU may be very closely following Legends continuity and the events of the EU, at least for the Thrawn saga. The way things are looking, it seems that Grand Admiral Thrawn will be back at full power and will likely bring the New Republic to its knees, as he did in Legends. But how would he do this exactly? And what evidence do we have to Thrawn's plan and how it will unfold? And why is Moff Gideon so important to it? There are two distinct pieces of information that clue us into Thrawn's grand plan. The first being all the not-so-subtle references and setups concerning the cloning of Force sensitives. The entire reason that Grogu had been captured in the first place was revealed to us in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, when Din Djarin, Cara Dune, Greef Karga, and Mithril investigated and destroyed the Imperial research outpost on Navarro. Inside this outpost, they found an incriminating lab with several bacta tanks full of various specimens. A holo message to Moff Gideon by Dr. Pershing. Here, he explains that he has been trying to splice the DNA of subjects with midichlorians, likely trying to make artificial Force sensitives. This of course failed, as the bodies of the non-Force sensitives rejected the midichlorians or became overwhelmed and died. We also know this to be the case when looking at the research notes of none other than Darth Plagueis, who experimented in very similar ways with very similar results during his depraved time as a Sith. But moving on, we later see in Season 3, Dr. Pershing explaining to the New Republic the details of his experimental theory, which consisted of the idea of safely splicing the DNA of two different specimens in order to achieve a clone with the advantages of both specimens, clearly in an attempt to create a Force-sensitive clone. This specific experiment seems to be one of the end goals for this Imperial remnant, and it directly echoes the plan that Thrawn had in Legends continuity. Having used the DNA of Luke Skywalker, Grand Admiral Thrawn had begun the creation of an entirely new clone army. this time with the genes of Force sensitivity. His ultimate goal was to raise an army of Force sensitives that were completely subservient to his new empire. The reason being, Thrawn had become somewhat fascinated with Skywalker and the entire idea of Force sensitivity after Luke killed Palpatine, and as far as he knew, Vader as well. Amazed by this, he wanted to raise up an elite Force-sensitive army of his own, believing it to be the best possible way to get revenge on the New Republic and topple them for good. We can see this plan being carried out right before our eyes in canon as we speak, and it's very likely that Ahsoka might have figured this out either by deduction or had it revealed to her in a vision through the Force. Either way, Ahsoka is going after Grand Admiral Thrawn specifically, and it may not just be to rescue Ezra. This nearly brings us to our next piece of evidence, that being the Dark Jedi, Joruus C'baoth. Many are quite well aware of the rumor that came about from the Ahsoka series, and that will feature prominently a Dark Jedi, likely the antagonist for a small while. Many, including our own researchers here at the Archives, are convinced that this Dark Jedi may in fact be the insane Jedi Master, Joruus C'baoth. For those who don't know, this insane Jedi originally comes from legends, and he was one of the main catalysts for Thrawn's biggest successes. Having struck a bargain with this Dark Jedi, Thrawn had promised to deliver Luke Skywalker and his children to the Master, in exchange for his abilities in battle meditation. You see, Joruus C'baoth desired to create his own Jedi Order in his image, likely with the use of the dark side, and needed a Padawan along with some impressionable children in order to do so. Luke Skywalker and the offspring of Leia Organa Solo were the perfect candidates for this new Dark Order. Therefore, Thrawn tried repeatedly to capture the Skywalker family and deliver them to C'baoth. However, with little success most of the time. But meanwhile, Thrawn was using the Dark Jedi Master in his fleet, as C'baoth could use battle meditation, which was instrumental in many of Thrawn's victories. However, Joruus C'baoth soon proved himself to be quite the liability, as he was unpredictable, selfish, and erratic. Being completely insane, he believed that he was the most important person on Thrawn's ship due to his status as a Jedi Master, and only obeyed Thrawn's orders because he wanted Luke Skywalker. However, when Thrawn was having difficulties delivering on his end of the bargain, Joruus C'baoth became a nuisance, and soon an outright danger out of himself when he began to make threats to the Grand Admiral, and even followed through with them on some occasions. On one occasion, force choking Thrawn, doing so in a very heated hologram conversation. This caused Thrawn to start believing that this was more trouble than he was worth, and he was soon looking forward to ridding himself of the crazed Dark Jedi. We may see these things come to play very soon, because of course the core reason that Joruus C'baoth was a clone. As he knew him, Joruus C'baoth was a clone of a Jedi Master that died during the Clone Wars, and it was because of this cloning process that he had been driven insane. And we believe we are beginning to see the very implementation of this plan, of a Dark Jedi clone being introduced to Star Wars canon. And we believe that Thrawn thinks that Moff Gideon has the information on how to perfect a Force-sensitive clone and build a Force-sensitive army. Therefore, why he was deemed extremely important and freed, likely to begin joining the ranks of the Grand Admiral. But my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And do you believe that Joruus C'baoth and a crazed Dark Jedi clone could be the antagonist of an Ahsoka series, and could be set up here by The Mandalorian Season 3? Do you believe that it was Thrawn that freed Moff Gideon? And if not for this purpose, what sinister end? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting our archives yet again. May the Force be with you, and we hope to hear from you soon.